try, through many efforts, to have the room rearranged a little differently. I asked for that. But because of technology and the need to have us filmed and the need to have us recorded, it was a little bit impossible to do that. Because I think when you can arrange a room differently to do what we're trying to do, to me it suggests that we're all on the same playing field and that we have no hierarchicalness in what we do. I regret that, but for the sake of technology, this is where we are. Because I know somebody's going to say, well, probably not you all, but out there, why are you arranged like that? So we know better. We just have to do this better, okay? That being said, I need to thank the superintendent staff, Dr. Gale, Jaleesa, superintendent, and anyone else who had a hand in making this happen for us. I think you already know that we have been in discussion about this strategic plan for a while. And I will remind you that the plan was adopted in 2016, and it was reviewed in 2017 and 2018, and then it was revised again in 2019, and of course it's being reviewed and revised again by us. With that being offered, I am going to say that it is my hope and desire today that we'll be able to go through our pillars. And I need to make sure and say pillars and not pillows, which I have done, and be able to leave and feel real good about what we've done and said by 4 o'clock today. This is our plan. If we get to the point that we didn't complete it, we are each equals in this work. We can talk about what we need to do if we need to come back. So I think I need to set that kind of understanding and have it undergrounded with where we go. Does that sound like a plan for all of us?
Sounds good.
That sounds good. All minds clear? Okay.
So, Madam Chair, are we
Yes,
being
ma'am.
recorded visually as well as audio? Okay,
Yes.
good to know.
Yes, we are. So we are being recorded. We're being recorded visually.
Okay.
And
Check. Also, is the
being
agenda?
live streamed?
yes, we are streaming.
There you go.
I was just trying to get to, I know, surprise, to get to all of that. But we're so good at what we do, we're going to be fine.
Why is it we're doing that?
We are going to be fine. So, again, it is my wish that we remove any physical barriers that would, what?
You want to stop it?
No.
I don't think we can.
All right.
I think we need to continue with what we have set out to do because I think it's been noticed in the papers and to the public that that is what we're doing. Okay. And you need to know that the public has been invited. The public is invited, so the public could show up or they could not. We are
Right.
their board. We represent them.
My
And we will
login isn't
continue
working.
to
Do we
be
have IT support?
transparent. Ms. Striplin is saying, Denver, that her volume is not working.
No, my login for board
Log
docs.
in. Oh, I haven't tried that yet. Okay. Okay, are we about ready now to,
was doing that, but the agenda is in your folder. And I asked Ms. Coffey that, asked her if that wasn't necessary. Also, Robert Olmsted will not be here if we have some technical issues.
Okay, is the agenda on board docs?
It is. Yes, ma'am.
I would prefer to be I just like to have it digital so we can, but my login, it should work. And I don't know if it's been reset or something. I know, mine has the login screen.
Can you go through the public domain? And
Yeah.
just without your login?
Yep.
But wait, where?
I don't know why. What do you have?
But also everything we have is in this red folder, right?
Oh, exclamation.
yes, so your red folder contains the outline of what we're doing, to include a copy of the strategic plan. It also contains a copy of the agenda for today's meeting. And we will discuss other information as we get on into our planned agenda for today. Are there other housekeeping chores we need to take care of, Dr. Gale? Denver? Jaleesa? Anybody? All right. All minds clear? then we're ready to go to work. Now, you know, in any good plan, there has to be somebody who corrals us, and I say that with love. And our corraler is none other than the world's best attorney on planet Earth, and that is Opal McKinley Williams. But before she starts to talk, we're going to allow the superintendent to have a couple of remarks. We certainly know that he is the man with the day-to-day plan.
And it will be a couple, I promise you. So as you know, our offices are closed on Friday. We started our 4-day week last week.
Last week.
So it's just me, Ms. Coffey, Dr. Gale, and Denver that are here today. I had a chance. First, I have to be honest with you guys. School just got out, and I'm still trying to catch my breath and recover from the end of the school year. I know we needed, because we pushed the end of the school year back by 3 weeks because we started late, to start having these conversations and looking at our strategic plan that expires this year. So I've had a chance to go back and look at what was created back in 2016 that we kind of amended, and it was created before I took office. So I guess it was the summer prior to the election in November of 16, ahead of the visit from Advanced Ed. Is that correct? And then we've made minor tweaks to it. And I'm going to ask Dr. Gale if she would give a historical perspective, because she has been deeply involved in this process probably for many years now since she's been out here, to talk about past practice. But what you have before you is the strategic plan as it sits now, that a lot of time and effort went into planning, and I don't necessarily believe that we need to recreate the wheel, quite honestly. And then you also have some of the comments that I made during my 5 brief presentations about each of the pillars and some of the things that we are doing around each one, or have done around each one during the last year, or more specifically the last several years. So I'm going to ask Dr. Gale if you would, to give maybe a historical perspective of the development of this strategic plan, and did y'all use the plan prior to 2016 to help guide this document?
Yes, sir. Good morning, Madam Chair, Superintendent, board members, Mr. Braggins, and Attorney Williams. Prior to the plan that you have before you, there was another strategic plan. Conveniently, they went along with when we had accreditation reviews. The pillars, with the exception of the financial transparency pillar, were developed to align with the standards for advanced ed. In the past, what we've had an opportunity to do, staff such as Jillian Gregory, John Hunkiar, Kathleen Rogers, Shane Seifert, Meryl Wimberly at the time for financial transparency, working along with Ms. Rasmussen and others, we developed what we wanted in each of the pillars, the goals and such. And that was based upon what happened the 5 years before with our advanced ed accreditation. And so this year, we've moved along the same way. It's always been important because this is the board and the superintendent's strategic plan to get the priorities. And if you'll recall, we have made sure that you had an opportunity to voice your priorities so that staff could make sure that they are memorialized, if you will, within the strategic plan. So that's what we've done before. We have staff who will be awaiting the words that you share with us today, the guidance that you provide as you have provided in the past, so that we can propel going forward with the next strategic plan. Though it expires on June 30 of this year, it doesn't mean that the sun's not going to come out that next morning. We'll continue to work until we're ready to bring forth a strategic plan that you feel good about. We're also going to get like we have in the past, input from stakeholders. We will have a special call meeting for our district advisory council for this and a couple of other reasons. We'll also share this with our principals because they use this as a springboard, if you will, for their own school improvement plans. And so with all of the feedback that you give and the other stakeholders, staff will be working together to present a draft to you later on when we agree upon an adjusted timeline for a final approval.
So when was our last accreditation when was that visit? 2017, 2018?
Yes, sir. 2017. Our next accreditation visit is in, gosh, I can see the plaque.
22?
No, sir, 23.
23?
23, so it may have been 18.
And so what I'm looking to get out of this is your input and your feedback on this document as it exists today, and then things and priorities that you all have in common themes that you have to take back then to the people that own these different pillars, and some kind of overlap to take back to Jillian, to Kim Banks, to John Hunkyar, to Kathleen Rogers, to Shane, to Dr. Gale, for them to get y'all's thoughts as they relate to each pillar, and then for them to mold together a draft edits, so to speak. You know, that's the approach I'm recommending now, or we can throw the whole thing out and start over again, which I'm not recommending we do.
Well, Madam Chair, Mr. Superintendent, first of all, let me apologize for being late, but I'm concerned regarding the fullness, the approach. I continue to use these words ad nauseum, reimagining and optimizing. And I think a strategic plan moving forward that is already baked and cooked, when we take it to those persons who we identify as stakeholders, to include the community engagement that our chair talks about so frequently. I don't know if we optimize the input from persons who will be guided by the strategic plan moving forward if there's no input before the strategic plan is fully baked and cooked. And I'll be honest with you, I am amazed that we're having this discussion of a strategic plan and this room is amazingly empty. I would have thought that there would have been buy-in and comment and influence from community-based people and then harnessing the ingenuity and the innovation found in the district. So, I mean, there are a variety of approaches. I'm willing to go through this, but I want to make certain that whatever we would take to our public, that there is genuine opportunity to influence what will be our strategic plan moving forward.
So it was again our thought, and it was to get your input. You all have listened to presentation after presentation, to workshop after workshop of all different types of things that relate to items that are in the strategic plan. It was to get basically today your feedback, some priorities that you have in these areas, and then to take back to our folks to craft that or interweave those comments or those thoughts into the different pillars and the goals within each pillar. I can tell you that when I talk to principals, I have five. The big five, as Sue Crawl will call them. Number one is, first and foremost, school safety, is to keep our children and our employees safe. Number two is student achievement. Number three is morale, the morale of our teachers and our staff. Number four is financial responsibility and accountability. And number five is maintenance of the plant and the appearance of our schools and how well our schools and facilities are maintained. Those are the big five that I evaluate my principals on each and every year. They are somewhat aligned, I think, in many ways to this strategic plan. But again, if y'all want to, it's the six of us here today, and it is what it is. But I think also with guidance from Mr. Breggins, that we can get some things accomplished.
Yes, Ms. Rasmussen?
Mr. Jones, I felt a lot like you do right now about 4 or 5 years ago. And what I would suggest now is using your analogy of baking, that these are the basic ingredients. You can decide you need a little less salt or a little less, whatever. But I think what you're going to find in this document are the basic ingredients that can be tweaked. And then if you decide you want to bake a different type of cake with different flavoring, you can add that too. 4 or 5 years ago, we had 4 pillars, and you've heard me say before that I added the 5th. If there's another pillar you want to add, anything you want to take away, I think this is a good foundation to start with, rather than having to start from scratch and put all the flour together. Just a thought.
Madam Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
I would agree with that sentiment, and I would also say that the input from our community stakeholders is something we've been listening to for the whole year. So they've been here, they're with us, they've commented, and we have been absorbing that. Think of all the comments we've heard, all the community engagements, the discussions, the workshops. So they're here with us. Those words are in our mind, they're in our heart, they're in our email box. So this is a chance for us to absorb what they've said and respond, but to each other and in the framework of composing the strategic plan. So I think they're here with us. They may not be sitting in this room, but I think that there are a lot of people whose words are remain with us this morning and who we've been listening to throughout the year. So I find this a refreshing opportunity for just us to sit and really delve into what we want to do as far as the strategic plan. And I would like to just go ahead and just jump in with one thought that came to my mind just based on what you said. And I would like to get if there is a possibility or a reason why we shouldn't move safe environment pillar number 2 up to pillar number 1. Yeah, I think this is the year to do it. I think it's the right thing to do. I think the climate demands it. And I think this board supports it. So
Yeah, and
would
I
like to see
agree,
that.
and that's why when I presented on the pillars, I moved it up. That was the first thing that we addressed, because I agree with you. It absolutely needs to be front and center, and
Yep.
it aligns to what I tell my principals.
Yep.
Job 1 is to protect our children from harm.
Perfect.
And that, we've been kind of working under that as we talked with a consultant about it, so, yeah, that's great.
Wonderful.
Yes, Ms. Wood?
Just one addition, when you said the word morale, as I think you're number 3, and I'm not sure that that's addressed in here, but I think it's a really important one, and we should spend a little time on that.
Okay. Then, when we're into the workshop discussions,
Excuse me.
I think we can do that. I certainly don't object. Mr. Jones?
I'm going back to what Ms. Wood said. Are the pillars different than what I see written here?
No.
Are you talking about, this is the superintendent's evaluation, basically, this is a summary of what you gave to us over those 5 board meetings, right?
Right, so the 5 pillars as they stand now are student achievement, safe environment, quality resources, engaged community, and financial stewardship and transparency.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, and I guess when you were recapitulating them extemporaneously, it didn't sound as if those which you cited or spoke are like morale is not seen in any of these words.
Right, that's what
She wants to
Ms.
add.
Wood said. So if there's a place to put it in.
But you said it.
He said it as one of his 5 top
Oh,
priorities.
one of his pillars, but not one of
it's
the pillars
not-
of Leon
It's
County
not
Schools.
listed in here, and so.
Oh, okay.
I think
I
When
apologize.
when I evaluate principals, it's on those 5 things. It's on
Okay.
first, a safe environment. Number 2, student achievement and accountability. Number 3, the morale of faculty and staff.
Okay.
Number 4, financial responsibility and accountability. And number 5, the plant, the physical
physical
appearance
plant.
of their
Okay.
school and the maintenance of their school and in their plant.
All right.
So we have engaged community here that's not in that top 5, and I think the rest are pretty much covered.
What?
Quality resources.
I'm sorry, what do you mean?
I'm just trying to compare
But-
his to ours, but they're all subsumed in here in some way or another. So I don't want to get off on that too much, but I do like the morale. I'd like to
Yes.
talk about that.
All right, so at some point, we'll make sure that morale is part of the discussion. All right. Are we about ready to move along
Yes,
now?
ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Now, as I was saying, I'm still going to use the word corral. The school board way of work, Oprah McKinley Williams, the world's best attorney.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Sure.
Madam Chair, I actually am going to suggest that I stand down from my corralling efforts at this point. You all are already kind of starting into the meat of what this meeting was about. My
Okay.
comments really are about board meeting way of work in general.
Okay.
So I'm going to ask that my comments be moved to the workshop on Monday, agenda review workshop, since we have one item.
Okay.
Yeah, and I just allow y'all to keep moving because you're already starting, you're humming and ready to go. So
Well, this is
I will
true.
work with Dr. Gale on getting that added to the agenda for the workshop meeting on Monday. Is that okay?
That's fine.
All right.
All minds are clear on that. All right. And so with that being said, we will continue into the workshop mode. Let me just tell you about the individual who's going to be leading us along the path of our discussion, our pillars today. Cheval Briggins. And you need to say Cheval. It's not like the Chevrolet like he's been teased about, okay? He is a graduate of Admiral King High School in Ohio. He received a bachelor's degree from Oberlin College in Oberlin, Ohio, double majoring in psychology and communications. He obtained a master's of business administration marketing degree from the University of Phoenix and has completed all coursework toward a doctor of philosophy degree in business administration marketing from North Central University. Now, we met him because we know him as he is an employee of the Florida School Boards Association, and he is the CEO, if you will, of the Member Engagement Coordinator, as the Member Engagement Coordinator with the Florida School Boards Association. He is an independent consultant. He provides services as an executive director, CEO coach, workshop, goal setting, strategic planning, on and on and on, and I could continue to go.
There, move your mic.
To continue to go on, he has been sought after by many other organizations in state and out of state. He serves as an in-seat online marketing and leadership adjunct professor at colleges and university. Our consultant for the day, Cheval Briggins.
Good morning.
Thank you, Ms. Bowen.
Surely, sir.
Good morning.
Welcome.
Again,
Morning.
I think
Good
I met all
morning.
of you individually. So I want to say I'm happy to be here. I know I have to stay here at the mic, and that is not my style when I talk. I want to thank Superintendent Hannah and the board for inviting, for reaching out to FSBA. And in all fairness to all of you, you reached out last year to have this session.
That's right.
And as we know, life happened, and we had to make a turn, and so that was the reason for the delay. So really, and even that's, I think it's good for the public to know that you really had reached out last year, and I think everyone can understand that. While your board chair, Ms. Bowen, has stated this already, I definitely have to take my hat off and say thank you to Dr. Gale and Ms. Coffey for everything that they have done. We're going to have fun today. I don't do anything unless we're having fun, but also we're going to get the work done. I have spoken with board member chair, your board chair, Ms. Bowen, received input from Superintendent Hannah, and have spoken with Dr. Gale, I don't know, probably numerous times, not face-to-face, Zoom, and via cell. So we know what we have to do. If the board decides that they want to make some changes, obviously we will go with that, but we pretty much have a game plan, if you will. And if you're a sports fan, you know we're into the NBA playoffs right now. If we have to make adjustments during the game, we will do that. And I'm looking at the time, and so as the CEO and Andrea Messina and I had a conversation, I said, well, I'll adjust based on what occurs. I'm used to doing that. So with that being said, and you've already gotten started, so you're not on the beach, you're already in the water. So let's get started. Okay, outcomes for today. Understand the board's perspective, role, and action. Evaluate current strategic plan. Discuss and come to consensus regarding vision for each pillar, which was mentioned by Superintendent Hannah. And then we will review next steps. Rules of engagement, most of these are probably not new to you or not ones that you don't follow, but it's always good to just cover those. Mental presence is required. You have to be here mentally. We want you to be here physically. We want you to, actively listen to what is being said. Everyone has a voice. I do. I've watched the board meetings a few times. I don't think that's a problem, and I think that's good. That you do speak and communicate. And I said this to Mr. Jones. I said it to Ms. Bowen in Tampa, Florida. When I observed your board meetings, one of the things I could come away with, along with the public, is that even if you have a unanimous vote on 90%, 90 to 95% of the agenda items that require approval, I can tell you it's not a rubber stamp board. No, but I mean that as a compliment. It's not a rubber stamp board. You've thought about it, you've had discussion, and that's good for the public to really see that you put some thought into it. You're just not rubber stamping whatever comes across the desk. No bad questions,
I can
no
assure
stupid.
you that.
I know you can. No bad questions, no bad ideas. That's what we tell students. Try it on. Okay, so when you hear something, don't ignore it. Don't say, no, that won't work. Try it on first. I don't know about you, but there are certain things I have to try on in terms of clothing items. I can't just buy it. I have to try whatever it is, and usually it's shoes. I don't do well ordering shoes online, so I have to try those on. So I want you to do that today. We will address problems, not people. So address the problems, not the people. Mutual respect will promote creative thinking. I remember a gentleman who is a mentor and father figure and a friend of mine, Mr. Willard Walker, and we were doing some diversity training, and he said, we have plenty of laws, rules, regulations on the books to cover every topic. He said, what we don't have enough of is respect for one another. So it's okay. We will agree to disagree, and that's okay. It's not okay to not speak up, and that double negative is in there on purpose. You have to speak up, but again, like I said, I don't think that will be a challenge or an issue with this board. Off-topic comments will be parked. Talk a little bit more about that. I have the parking lot sheet over there. So if there's a certain area where I have to keep you, and we'll talk a little bit more. The weeds should be avoided. We'll talk a little bit more about that because that's not your area or your lane. And we'll talk about who is responsible for digging into the weeds. And at the end of the day, unity is critical. Just to get you going a little bit, you see, there are 2 eyes, 2 ears, 1 mouth. That's my role. 2 eyes, 2 ears, 1 mouth. So I will listen to what you have to say, observe vocal cues, nonverbal communication, and sometimes when something's said, you can tell that someone is thinking, and maybe they don't say it, so I might, ask you if there's something you want to say. And the 1 mouth concept, because it is your plan as Leon County School District, and we need to hear from you. Why don't you take a look at this picture? It is a picture of a highway with many vehicles. I want you to put yourself in the driver's seat of one of those vehicles. It doesn't matter which one. Pick out your favorite based on the make, model, year, or the color. And I want you to imagine that one of the other vehicles begins to drive erratically in and out of the lane, and they're driving maybe 100 miles per hour, even though you might be able to drive 70 miles per hour on this highway. What are some of the possible outcomes? in this situation? Crash. What else?
Multiple crashes.
Multiple crashes. What else?
You lose your way. You might not get off where you need to.
May not get off where you need to.
Mm-hmm.
Delayed because of the crash,
Hurt in them.
if not hurt in them.
Absolutely.
People slow down, people speed up, people miss their exit, people get off of the highway. As a result of the crash, you said injured, could be death, fatalities. That's what happens in organizations when we don't stay in our lane. And when I do board development, when we talk about the superintendent, or if I'm dealing with the CEO and the board's role, and the board, the CEO and the staff's role, that's important, and it's important for not only for our discussion, but when I leave and you see me maybe again in Tampa at the annual joint conference, you'll have to remember that. Well, you'll say, well, what is our lane? Where's our space? From the runway to about 9,999 feet of elevation, that's the principal and instructional staff. That's where they work. Okay? So as we talked about the weeds, that's where they have to be. Superintendent Hannah, his administrative team, they fly at about 10,000 to 49,999 feet. That's where he and his staff maintain their space. As a board, you're at the 50,000 foot and higher level. You have to have a macroscopic view. So as we talk today, we want to make sure that our conversations and discussions are at the 50,000 foot level. Okay, if we start dropping into the weeds, I might remind you, you've jumped out of the plane.
Without a parachute? I'm sorry, go ahead.
Parachute or not, you're at 10,000 or maybe on the ground. And we'll leave that to Superintendent Hannah, because as part of the steps in this process is that we will have the discussion. Superintendent Hannah and his team will put together some goals, based upon all of the input and the action plans. Okay. Quickly, you see there's a clock, and this is courtesy and property of Michigan Association of School Board. And it starts with adopting the vision and the goals. So in the red at the top of the clock, board authority. Superintendent and his staff is down here. So you have adopt the vision and the goals. We'll talk a little bit about that as we talk about the pillars and the vision. We know you adopt policies. Okay? You adopt those policies. Then the superintendent and his staff will develop plans and regulations. They implement the action plan. They evaluate the progress while you evaluate as a board the outcomes. And people always ask, what is the difference? Let me give you this analogy. As my kids would say, back in the day, when the automobile was made, it was made from beginning to end in one plant. And along that line, assembly line, you had many departments, and someone had the authority to stop the line. Could be a supervisor, manager, as the car was being built. Eventually, the car would roll off the line, out the door, into a lot. Evaluating the progress occurs while you're building the car and it's on the line, whether it's at the beginning or near the end of the assembly line. Okay? The evaluation of the outcome occurs when that car rolls off the line out of the plant. And as the board, that's where you evaluate. Again, it's about maintaining space. It's the same analogy in terms of dropping out of the airplane. Don't want to get into, quote unquote, the plant, using that analogy, because the superintendent and staff is responsible for that. You evaluate the outcomes of the school district when it's said and done. Okay? One person's accountability is another person's micromanagement. So I call it the M word. And usually when we say it's a letter and a word, it means, oh, that's bad. And micromanagement will result in that first slide of the highway. Okay? You're in the lane, micromanaging. You hired your superintendent, and you have given the keys to not only the vehicle, but to the organization to make it work. When I served on the school board, and it was in Lansing, Michigan, people would always come to me in the store, at the football game if I didn't make it up to the press box to hide, at the basketball game if I was sitting next to the superintendent because they didn't want to talk to the superintendent. And they would ask, what are you going to do about fill in the blank? And I would tell them, nothing. They would look at me and say, that's not my job. It's not my role, not my lane, not my airspace. Yes. Right. But it's still about the role. Whether you're appointed or elected, the role is still the same. Okay? And he has a job description, and he has a quote-unquote job to do. So it's about carrying out that role. Just makes everything smoother. All right. Priorities. You have a piece of paper. Oh, no. Tell you what, you have because Miss Dr. Gale, you have a card.
Yes.
You have a card. All right. We talked about priorities. I want you to write down, what are the top 3 priorities? As we have this discussion regarding the strategic plan. Superintendent Hannah gave 5.
I'm not sure your question.
What are the top 3 priorities for this school district as it relates to the strategic plan? It's not a right or wrong answer. Your thoughts. What are the top 3 priorities for the school district?
If it's in the 5 or including the 5.
Not necessarily about the pillars. I want to hear your thoughts regarding just priorities.
You want to use your mic, Mr. Principal's listening, I think.
Some of these priorities may be incorporated into the pillars. Give me 3. You done?
I'm done. Me, pick me. You guys are overthinking it, man. Oh, wait, do you want it like on a sticky note?
Something that you
Something I can give you? Okay, sticky note, people.
Oh, okay. You got
Be a card, be a sticky note, piece of paper.
This is going to be indicative of our personalities. I'll be the first one to get and it'll all be one word. Bam, bam, bam.
I already heard.
Daryl's writing a dissertation over there.
Make it short.
It's Shakespearean prose.
And he's going to use words I don't even know what they mean. So you're going to learn a whole lot about our personalities.
That's Daryl's fault. If you can't read my handwriting, I'll happily decipher.
Thank you.
I have the penmanship of a serial killer.
Oh,
Okay, that I didn't know.
Means you were meant to be a doctor.
That I didn't know. That's funny.
I can't say anything about my handwriting.
I got to remember what I wrote now. Okay.
My mother wants to know why I didn't inherit my dad's handwriting.
I think I wrote.
And the doctor commented, I had a roommate in college. He was an English major. We hated for him to leave a phone message. We didn't have cell phones. The phone was on the wall by the door in the dorm. And it took 3 of us, and we still couldn't decipher what. We didn't even know who the message was for. His handwriting was that bad. An English major.
Okay.
You want one from me too?
The mic, when you need to use it, yeah.
Jeopardy round should be playing that song. They're looking for a host, right?
Okay. Okay. We got it.
May not be able to read mine.
If someone said Aaron Rodgers was going to leave Green Bay and take over as host,
He can make more money. Ah. Okay. All right. You're like, that's it? No, not necessarily. Now you have another assignment. Now here are the pillars. We know we're going to switch student achievement and safe environment. Okay, we know that. I've been told, we heard it today. We know what order they are in now. There's a document that Dr. Gale is going to give you. Okay. And no. What I want you to do for each pillar, give it a grade. How did you do on that strategic plan for that pillar? From A+ to F. I know we're not going to have any Fs. I've seen the documents. I know the work that has been completed. You can use plus and minuses.
Thank you.
A, B, C, D. One victory in that pillar. So each page is for one pillar. A victory. Give me a one statement, one sentence statement regarding why you gave the pillar that particular grade. One sentence. So you're going to give the status, as Superintendent Hannah said, he said, we have the status of what has occurred with this strategic plan, where we are. So as a school district, for each pillar, how did you do?
As a school district,
Yeah, for that pillar.
in a COVID year, or can we go, I mean,
Well, and this is what you have to remember. The strategic plan is not 1 year old. The strategic plan is about, 3-4 years old, correct?
Right,
Right, 2016 to now.
right.
So we're not looking at 1 year. We're looking at the strategic plan. We know COVID existed. Everyone should get an A during COVID. And we also know, because of COVID, it may have delayed some things occurring as it relates to the strategic plan. Because we want to try to wrap up the old as we move in to what will be the next strategic plan. And then the last thing you want to do is complete the if we had accomplished one sentence statement, I would have given it a different grade. Okay. So if you gave it a B+, what would have needed to be accomplished for you to have given it an A-, A, or A+? Now, if you gave it an A+, I guess you can write in NA. So I'll give you a little time to complete that.
The if we had is difficult.
Yes, I know. Have to, But if you gave it a B+, you know why you gave it a B+. But there must be a reason why you didn't give it an A- or an A.
I don't like tests. I just thought I'd throw it out.
It's not a test. One sentence.
Oh,
One sentence, one sentence.
sorry about that.
I remember my teachers telling me, you do know a noun and a verb.
That's-
Makes a sentence, right?
You done? I'm not done. Where is this physical stewardship?
This is your 30-second elevator speech.
Wow. Your penmanship is worse than mine.
Mr. Jones, you thought I was not telling the truth.
Wow.
My mother would tell you that's good. I've tried. I was not gifted with my dad's penmanship.
And my mom's either.
Y'all are just inviting the cursive writing conversation with all this,
Okay, exactly.
all this going on. I know. Isn't this cool? We need these at every meeting,
At
especially
every
if they go
meeting.
on past 8 o'clock at night.
Every meeting.
Need sustenance.
Yeah.
Is everyone at, let's say, pillar 4? At least? 4 or 5 were complete?
I'm done.
I will take the silence as a
Almost.
affirmative.
Oh my gosh, I didn't realize. Going back at school.
It's a good thing.
Good thing.
No, it's a good thing to stop and think.
Oh, yeah.
Important.
Yeah. Can we finish in about 5 minutes?
We can.
Okay.
We'll set up here.
Okay.
What did she say?
She said pencils down,
Oh
hand
my
in your
gosh.
test.
Roseanne's does look at
How,
Lily
how
and Fee, I can
quickly
see
we
this.
forget how the students feel, correct? How quickly we forget.
Following directions.
Oh, is that?
How quickly we forget. First, what we'll do, we'll go back to the priorities. Then we'll talk a little bit more about your evaluation. Okay. Again, as a reminder, this is for you. I'm also tilling some ground and sowing some seeds for food for thought as you move forward. So let's take a look at the priorities. Not really surprised. As Board Member Jones, Mr. Jones said, my handwriting is horrible. So when you were talking about handwriting, I knew I would win. Poor hand penmanship, I would win that award.
Oh, no, I won't.
So we have improved communication. 4 of you mentioned safety. And as we go through, if there is something up here that you don't understand, you can ask for clarification. Whoever wrote it could expound on it. Educate is what was on the piece of paper. Support was the next one. Student achievement and fiscal responsibility received 2 votes. Data decision making, increased diversity, equity, it was mentioned twice. Well-run school district, expansion of career tech, and then there was expansion of early childhood education and teacher salaries. So as we look at safety, I had assumed that that would be number 1, along with student achievement and fiscal responsibility, just looking at the pillars and some preliminary discussions that we had.
Sir,
Yes.
I'm interested in, I don't know if it's you provides the explanation or the person who wrote it, data and decision making.
It would be the person who wrote it.
That was me.
Okay.
Sometimes I've sort of mentioned this a number of times. I think that we sometimes make decisions on what's the hot topic of the day rather than really having a good data set to look at to see where our issues are, what's working, what's not working, to help us make decisions. Again, I think, no one's actually in charge of that, and that's a problem for me. But I think we try to do it as best we can, but I just think we could do a better job of that.
And for clarification,
Not just test scores. I'm talking about all kinds of really looking at our performance and where we're doing great and where we need to improve.
okay. And when you say we, you're speaking to.
I'm speaking to the school board, actually. I mean, that's our job to
Okay.
evaluate, to look, see what's working, what's not working. And sometimes I don't feel, I mean, we get lots of reports, and I really appreciate that, but I think sometimes we don't have that 50,000-foot view, and I would like to have a tool, a better way to look at things.
Okay. Yes.
Not to get too out of too deep into the weeds, but
And
Please bring your mic
microphone.
down.
Mic, please.
I said that to you and then I didn't do it. My reaction to what you said is also, let me think about how to say this, I'm not sure. When you first started talking, I thought, well, we want to make sure that our staff, that the school district staff is making data-driven decisions.
That's
And
really
so
true.
our role then would be to make sure that we had a position in the budget to create a position for somebody to be in charge of what used to be like the data book, for example, right? Is that also what you're saying?
That's really what I'm saying, honestly, is having someone in a position that does that as an overall view, to advise the superintendent and staff on lots of things.
Kind of kind of like an old Margarita starter that used to provide that information sometime. I mean,
Yes,
that's the
we've
issue,
had
but,
that
yeah.
position in the district in the
Right,
past,
okay.
for sure. But just
Yes.
keep everybody honest. You know,
Mm-hmm.
when you're evaluating your own shop to present to the board, you're going to put your best foot forward. And so I think sometimes it would be good if we just had someone that was a little less attached to the, you know, like for each of these pillars, the plan was a person's in charge of that and they'll report to us on what they achieved. Sometimes I think it might be good to have one step removed, because if you're in charge of something, you know, it has to look good. And I think it might be helpful to have someone who doesn't own it, but is giving the superintendent information on, you know, you've got a weak spot over here, because if you're in charge of it, you don't necessarily want to show that to the world. So someone that's more objective and
Okay.
that could advise yes, you're right.
Madam
Ms.
Chair,
Rasmussen.
I think that goes back to what he also described in that that icon he put up there. We evaluate outcomes, and the district evaluates progress. And so, if we were to capture it through an office of analytics or data analytics, like for example, these third grade testing scores, and the insight that comes from the analysis of that would inform best practices moving forward, possibly even affect policy, priorities, and be able to drive down that information. I wondered, was that what you meant about data and decision making? So thank you for clarifying.
Okay.
And mine is the one third from the bottom, well-run school district. And I say that because I've often said that it is not the board's responsibility to run the school district, but I believe it is our responsibility to make sure it is well-run. And when we ask questions that may appear to be out of our lane, maybe it's because the altitude of our plane is higher and we can see problems coming. So for me, a well-run school district would include improved communication, education, support, morale, data-driven decision-making, and all of that, which is also because you only allowed me 3.
Felt a little limited, huh? Okay.
Okay. I will touch upon the data-driven decision-making a little later, but what I would always say is that every decision that is made should be based upon the data that you have at that time, given the time frame that you have to make the decision. You know, situations may occur that you have to make the decision today, and the situation arose at 8 o'clock, and you have to make it by 11 o'clock.
That's right. And that's,
And then when 1 o'clock comes, you have more data. It would have been great to have that, but you didn't. But at every point, everyone, school board members, when you're looking at policies, should be data driven. Anytime you're making decisions, and like I said, I'll touch upon that a little bit later on. The one that I would ask about, two people mentioned increased diversity, and then someone just wrote equity. Okay. Can you expound a little bit more on that, and maybe in terms of what you meant or what you were thinking?
Well, I think I just put the word equity in there, and I spelled it once, and then I spelled it correctly again. But anyway, I did. I wrote equity, and I wrote it because in looking at these pillars, everything that I looked at it through a lens of equity in everything that we do. I thought that every effort we make, we must ensure that our students in the community have equal access to high quality opportunities of high instruction, mental health services, instructional personnel, resources from an engaged community, and the distribution of financial resources. As a matter of fact, when I wrote the word equity, I started to write equity and then safety, because to me, safety is a first on my list, as I suspect it is on everybody else. But I couched under the safety piece, the mental health piece, which goes along with equity. And that is an area that I hope we'll be able to take a look at. I believe that we have enough security folk on our campuses. I think they do a good job. But when I think about safety and I look at the mental health piece and the way counselors are trained or not trained, are they culturally trained to the sensitivity of the communities that they need to serve? And so I've just not been able to look at any of this without keeping in mind that equity must be applied to everything we do if we're going to move these pillars, and closing the achievement gap and being able to provide the kind of action steps that we need to take as we increase student achievement. So my mind was just kind of blown away with closing that achievement gap in an equitable kind of way, and bringing in teachers who would supply the kind of diversity and increase the numbers to make a broader and larger diverse field of instruction and educational providers. So,
And I will be jotting notes for those who will need to review the data and information you have provided. And then that way, if there's ever a question, you, Superintendent Hannah, Dr. Gill can always ask.
You know, it'd be a cool game is if we took that list and then tried to pin which board member had that as a pro. I bet we could all do it.
You could do
'Cause
it.
I'm sure we could.
we
Right.
could do it.
I was also the increased diversity.
Okay.
Just to say that. So I didn't know if you pinned me with that one. But it concerns me that
Yep.
our schools are as segregated as they are,
Totally.
racially, socioeconomically, and the test scores reflect it. And so, you know, looking at those third grade test scores yesterday in a lot of detail, just reminded me again of how imbalanced our schools are in terms of what kids walk in the door with, and the test scores that are reflected there. So it's a big nut to crack, and it doesn't seem to be going in any better direction in some ways. But I really think we should spend as much time as we can on looking at our schools and figuring out ways to increase racial and socioeconomic diversity at our schools. So that was me.
I'm sorry. I also, if I could just add to that, we are still in transition, I think. We're just out of COVID. Are we in COVID? I don't know where we are. And we continue to move, and when I think about the data, we can only act on the information that we have or what we think we're going to be getting. And so I think that this board has been good about pivoting on a dime to do what we need to do, which is what I think good leaders need to do. And so I think that this discussion, of knowing where we are and where we're going when it comes to diversity and segregation, and or integration, we can't tell people where to move and that kind of thing, but to deal with what we've got. So I think it's good to have a look at that. I don't mean to get into the weeds, and I think I'm about to, but these are the things that, I think about when we start to talk about closing that achievement gap, which is part of the equity piece. We've got to meet these students and make sure that these counselors have a culturally sensitive training to meet the needs, because we're still in transition. I don't know where we're going to be. What are we going to find next year, when we get back to school as it could be? I don't know, but I just want to make certain that students get what they need to have delivered when counselors and psychologists are trying to meet their needs, and we don't know what trainings they've had. So I want to make certain that as folk are hired to counsel, we can make certain that they've got the necessary credentials and certificates to make that happen. So wherever that needs to be placed, in the weeds, in the parking lot,
Okay. As a reminder, when you're flying at the 50,000 foot level of elevation, and as you said, you have a macroscopic view. But while you have a macroscopic view, you need a microscope sometimes to see what is actually there. Because from up here, a person appears very small, even if they were 7 foot. But when you're on the ground, a 7-footer is very tall. So you have to keep that in mind. So what am I saying? You have a lot of different variables as you're looking at test scores. Just be mindful that you can look at the test scores in isolation, yet you want to also make sure you look at the trends, and then you have to document the quantitative data. I'm sorry, the qualitative data. We had COVID. And everything else under COVID impacted everyone. All Leon County School District employees and students, and as Board Chair Bowen said, she said, I don't know if we're still in, we're moving out. Life is going to be different next year. And when life is different, as we continue to move forward, then everything in life, including education, is going to be a tad bit different. Some things we'll say, okay, that's what we did pre-COVID. And then there will be some other variables. So you will have to keep all of that in mind as you're looking at that. All right. Okay, good. The evaluation. Someone said, is this like a personality assessment? You've sent us back to school. There are a couple things that I would say regarding this particular exercise. One, you should always take a look at where you are. So every time when you get a report, I don't know how you will get it. It doesn't matter if it's electronic. It doesn't matter if Superintendent Hannah, presents it at a board meeting, at a workshop. Take the time to sort of assess as a board, where are we? Okay? You really don't want to wait 4 or 5 years, and that 4th and 5th year decide this is where we, to assess, okay, in my mind, this is where we are, 50,000 foot level. Doesn't mean just because you're at a C- that you go in and you fix it. That's not the role. But someone said it's good to take time to think about it. W. Edward Demings is the grandfather of quality management, quality improvement, and he had a very simple cycle. You plan it, you do it, you implement, you check it, which means you evaluate, and based upon the evaluation, you act on it. That was basically his philosophy, PDCA. So even as a board, every once in a while, and you can decide that at a later point, you need to take time to sort of evaluate where are we as a district. I would also include that you evaluate yourselves as a board. That might be helpful in terms of how you engage with one another, how you conduct business, and it could be helpful to Superintendent Hannah and his staff. So that's just, food for thought. I observed, I told you, 2 eyes, 2 ears, 1 mouth. Some were writing, had it in your head. Then I saw people going through the document Superintendent Hannah gave you. And you were using that as the research, using that as your data to support what grade you were given. See, that I noticed a few of you were doing it. You're looking and saying, okay, this is what we did. I want to give it a fill in the blank with the letter grade. And then you were going through the document, and that was your supporting, that was your supporting evidence, if you will. And that's good to have. So when you get those updates, use those updates as a time to just take the time out to think about it. Okay? We're often in a hurry. We're often doing, and we don't take that time to put the brakes on, stop at a stop sign or a red light, and give it some thought. All right, let's talk about student achievement. before lunch, we're going to talk about student achievement, and we're going to talk about safety. We know we're flipping them, but right now, student achievement is first. All right. What I want to quickly do is just go around the room. I just want to get letter grades. And we're going to start.
Can I ask
Out
a
here?
question
Yes.
before we do that? I'm just concerned about putting this in context that we quickly did this and it's off the top of our head, and I don't want us all to be quoted as saying what grade we gave.
I would have the same concern.
Okay, I'll tell you what, you can give, how about if you, at the end of the day, I wondered when the discussion took place, if that was going to come up. Okay, so I'll tell you what, how about if we
Needs to be
compile it? I mean, I will
live streamed on
collect it.
Facebook.
Who live streams their workshops?
I don't know,
Well,
but we did, so.
it's live.
But I'm happy to talk about, because actually I did it in reverse. I talked about, all right, what do I consider a victory and what do I consider if we had, and that's how I came up with my letter grade. And
Okay,
actually,
all right.
it surprised me, my letter grade, based on my responses, was probably not what I would have put had I put that first.
Okay,
Kind of
and
thing.
so this was supposed to have been, this was some of the prep work. So we had to sort of trying to bridge the gap to get to where we need to go. So we can take what you wrote and we can take a look at that, and I will take a look at that at some point in time, and then there could be a discussion regarding that.
And yeah, maybe these findings can be captured for us and then shared with us in writing.
Yes, yeah,
Right, rather than it being publicly discussed.
that's
Because it's
Well, it is
almost as,
public.
Because I'm just saying,
Everything's
I don't want it
public.
to be.
I understand it could be a public document, so let me clarify my comments. I don't think that it is fair for us to evaluate the district in a live stream, and that's what we're doing here, with us going over these pillars. I just don't think that's not what, we're talking about a strategic plan, and I understand this is the work that gets us there, but I think what we're doing is we're evaluating the district and its work in a live stream context, and I don't think that was the intention for our coming together, and that's certainly not what I want to communicate to the public.
I
That's
think we
just
can
me.
answer these questions. What is one victory, right?
Yeah, certainly.
okay.
Let's
Fair,
skip- let's skip
fair
the
enough.
grades.
Assigning school
Let's agree to
grades to the
skip the
pillars is an evaluation of the district in this public context, and I'm not doing that.
Okay, fair enough.
All right.
We,
so
we,
where
like I
at?
said earlier, I made the comment that we might make some adjustments as we move forward based upon what the plan was.
Right.
So we can do that. All right. How about victories for student achievement?
do that.
One, quickly.
Creation of the early learning office.
Okay, another one.
Multiple high achieving student groups.
Multiple what? High?
High achieving student groups. So like our Brain Bowl teams, our
Okay.
Black History teams, are the
Okay.
group that came from Rickards that was the first
Science.
time to ever win.
Right, the Science Olympiad.
Science, yeah. And there are many, many of those from all over the district.
Okay, all right. Yeah,
Swear.
okay.
Okay, another one.
Phenomenal increase of technology utilization, not only us buying the Chromebooks, but teachers pivoting on a dime to utilize technology in a way that's never been done before. So just a huge,
That's student achievement?
well, maybe not, but that's how we Well, we don't know yet, do we?
Remember, there's no wrong answer, Superintendent.
people-
Hannah.
No, I would think that would be I'd put that one under quality resources.
Okay, so I'm thinking more about the teaching part of it, just the learning gain to foster student achievement in different ways than we've ever done before.
Okay. Another one? We have 3.
So I think about the finish line and the number of our kids that we get to the finish line, no matter where they start in kindergarten with us, no matter what their third grade reading scores are, the number of kids that we see ultimately graduating from our high schools and moving on either to trade school or to post-secondary school, college or university, the number of students that we actually take that are woefully unprepared for kindergarten, preparing the best we can for their third grade assessment, and then see them to a graduation ceremony.
Yeah, that's the picture. I only have 4. 2 more. Victories, student achievement, 2 more. Don't want to say?
No, it's been said.
Okay. Oh, which one was it?
Well, the pre-K and the technology. And the only thing I said under if we had was, I wish we had done it sooner. But at least we got it done.
Okay. That it?
You know,
Visioning for-
Superintendent said the graduation rate that we have in this district and our African-American graduation rate is really high, really strong. I'm really all proud of that.
You know, and Mr. Breggins would appreciate, there's a saying in athletics, it's not where you start, it's where you finish, right?
Okay, I will ask this question in context to your, in context to the second question for that pillar. Vision. What do you want to see for student achievement at the 50,000 foot level? What does student achievement look like? So you can refer to, if we had, you can expound on that. Okay, because obviously if you said if we had, and you filled in the blank, it includes that.
Then I would say close the achievement gap among all groups. 50,000 foot, close the achievement gap among all groups. My philosophy would be underneath that we would have an array of activities that all students could participate in and build a sense of pride and community. A positive school culture is needed, and it's critical to school success. We can go into teaching and such stuff, but yeah.
I heard pride. Heard pride. Does that go back to morale?
It could on teachers and students in a sense of community. Okay. I don't know where we put it,
I would
but
say-
we ought to be proud, folks.
When I think about student achievement, as much as it pains for me to say this, it's my goal that we would not have a D or an F school or any school that falls under district accountability. That's a huge goal of
Good.
mine.
Great. And maybe we could expand that to say, you probably said it best, Mr. Superintendent, in 5 years, the achievement gap is closed among all subgroups. Just saying. Throw it in there.
I'm going to stay on the theme of evaluating the effectiveness of the programs that are being used.
Evaluate, yeah,
basically, you know.
yeah, yeah. And we have graduation coaches too, well, we used to, we still have them, I think, so maybe this could be added to the graduation coaches' expectations as part of what they would continue to do. Graduation.
I'm going to have to leave to attend a funeral. I'd like to also announce the passing of Miss Kate Condra, who was a nearly 40-year veteran of our Leon County School District. She was 93 years old, and her funeral is today. Without the formality of a classroom, always provided teaching moments, even following her retirement, and was a jewel of the district. And I just wanted to acknowledge her and at the same time also acknowledge Dr. Fred Humphreys, the former president of Florida University. I was a student recruited by him, lived with him and his family for 9 years as both a student and then as a staff person. So I also would like to acknowledge him. And as I leave, my student achievement metric would be that we would be able to identify clearly defined pathways for our young people for both college prep as well as career and technical careers.
And as you leave, Mr. Jones, would you please take the expressions of condolences to their family, because those were icons in the community for many, many, many years, so we understand, okay?
Thank you.
Are you gone for the day?
No, I'll be back. I'll be back at around noon.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, he's planning to return. Okay.
I would add, I happen to know a number of kids who, I mean, we practically had to drag them across the stage, and who are now in graduate school or, law school. I mean, they just needed time to mature, and I really appreciate our guidance counselors and our principals who understand that. And these kids are, by their grades, they're not performing at a level, that we would necessarily be proud of, but recognizing in them the capacity to mature and thrive later, and not hold them back or pigeonhole them into, oh, well, you need to go this direction or that direction, or,
Okay.
I don't know how you capture that. The graduation coaches are really kind of our answer to that, I think, partially.
Well, on the opposite end of that spectrum, I had put fully funded, high-quality pre-K is the key to
Yeah,
student
right,
achievement.
agreed, yeah, high quality.
And to that point, I think it was Shari Gawander who said, when we refer to K-12, we should start referring to pre-K-12. And I was
Yes.
thinking that this document would be a perfect opportunity. I don't know how you feel about that, but for us to begin to,
agree.
with our emphasis on
Yeah.
pre-K and working with early childhood and all of that, that this would be a great time.
Oh, yeah. I
Change
agree.
our strategic plan title.
Yes.
Pre-K through 12.
Yes.
So for clarification purposes, at the top, we said the creation of early learning was a victory. Okay, so now when we we're talking about pre-K. Okay, all right.
Well, I think what they're saying is it's a feather in our cap to have created it, but we still have a lot of work to do. There's still a lot of things to do in that area. So it's both a positive and yet still
Yeah.
an area to work on.
And hopefully, no, I'm hoping this big infusion of money that's supposed to be coming to Florida is going to help us with that.
Right.
'Cause it's not something that we can do alone, because we're not funded for pre-K. And so it's sort of our goal, but a little bit out of our grasp. So,
But should we get it, we want to have that.
but we need it.
Should we get it?
I
want
think we
use
need
it.
to say that over and over. That's
Yes,
the
we
key
do,
to
we do,
this
we do.
whole achievement gap issue, is starting when they're 3 and 4 years old.
What else?
Mine fell under achievement gap. I put under the one if we had, and I put all with several underlines, students achieving, excelling, or excelling regardless of zip code. So, and I found myself in 3 out of the 5 pillars having feelings about the racial separation in our community, and that really it was student achievement, quality resources, and engaged community. Both I felt like I found myself seeing the same schools and groups within schools excelling, and the same schools struggling, and primarily surrounded the lack of diversity in most of our schools, and the struggles of some communities and some zip codes, and the vast disparity between what goes on in other zip codes and other schools.
I agree with that so much, and since again we're coming out of or going into COVID, we don't know where we are, and I'm thinking that these students that were already behind
We're coming out.
I
before,
hope we're coming out.
well, I hope so too, but we only know what we know, and so as we move into the future, to make certain that these kids have what they need now, that we're trying to bring up to the grade standards, that they need to be, that we do what we can. And I hate to keep saying leave no child behind, but we're in a transition period, and I keep feeling that very strong in my bones. No, I keep feeling that very strong in the information that we're receiving, and that we need to be in a position to provide for these children what they need to have to get caught up again. Okay? I'm not sure why we do that, how we do that, but I know that the ongoing consequences of this tradition, we've got to commit to be flexible. I was thinking about my husband last night. He played for Jake Gaither under the Blood, Sweat, and Tears unit. Y'all not old enough to remember that. But anyway, and he would always say, baby, you've got to be agile and flexible and mobile. And I thought, hostile.
Agile,
So you do. Thank you. And I'm thinking, well, we're kind of in this fight, in this game. So we've got to be that too, as we reach back and bring these children where they need to be under this student achievement thing that you were talking about, Alva. And so I don't want that to be forgotten, and to, we can only deal with the facts as we know them and anticipate what it is we think we're going to do as we go along. So
I think what smacks us in the face is what Alva said, that 4 or 4.5 out of 5 students at Gilchrist scored 3 or higher, and 1 out of 5 at Riley, Bond,
Absolutely
Springwood
scored.
this year, and others. I mean, it just smacks us right in the face.
Right. And so
And our job will not end, and it'll never end, but we're going to figure this out. But we keep, and we're not unlike other communities. We're not unlike,
no.
we're not
No,
nice,
it's universal.
but I also don't want to make excuses. It's like, it made me feel better. I got an F, but Opal got an F too, so I don't feel quite as bad. Well, we'll never get an F, but you see what I'm saying? What can we do to really move the needle on that?
Absolutely.
And that's again, that governance clock and the elevation. It's a big role and responsibility. And it falls with superintendent and his staff, and really that's what he's saying. And you're letting his team know this is what student achievement looks like.
To us, yes.
I think what is incredible, though, about our community, about our board, is that there's not a person in this room that wouldn't agree with what we're talking about. We are all very aware of it, and we acknowledge it. It's not like we're trying to hide it or cover up. It exists, and there isn't a person on this board who would disagree with that. And our district has done so many creative they've done everything they can to try and bridge that gap. I mean, we've implemented so many new programs and so many different things, and yet it still exists. So what can we do differently over the next, 4 or 5 years to really look back and say, all right, this was it, and I wish we knew the answer. I wish somebody would say, here it is, guys. It's wrapped up in a package for you. All you have to do is open it. And that doesn't exist. We've got to find it.
And I think that, going back to what Superintendent Hannah says, we're looking at the data. We have the data results he just gave, cited some, and you get the results, and you go back and you look at the plan, and as he said, it's going to be an ongoing
Yep.
Well, it's not just
challenge,
it's
not-
it's an issue that we can't solve because so much of it's outside of
It
our
will be
control.
ongoing to
Yeah.
reach that 100% to strive for that perfection, and it will be ongoing. And you have to. The adage is, if it ain't broke, you don't fix it. Well, the adage is really, if it ain't broke, you fix it anyways. And so even when you reach a level, it might be identified within one of the SMART goals objectives, 90% or 95, just because you get to the 90 or 95%, or as he said, 4.5 out of 5. Everyone is looking at 5 out of 5. And that's what, so you're always striving towards that. And so that's why you have to measure that progress. And it's not going to happen overnight, as you said, it won't happen overnight, but you can measure the progress over time.
Well, just one of the other things I said under this was, if you get more socially and racially integrated schools, it lifts all boats. And so what can we do? We can't control, as Ms. Bowenai says, where people buy their houses, but I do think we could keep trying anyway with our marketing and working with our realtors. And, we have some brand new, beautiful schools that people may never walk in the door. How can we get them to walk in the door and look at those and see, break down stereotypes is really what I'm trying to say. Some of decisions a lot of times are made based on mythology, history, and so what can we do as a board to try to at least turn around some of those things in people's minds, through our, because people.
Let me, and I'm, just as an aside, Chrissy and I were talking the other night about this exact issue, and I said, do me a favor, Google the demographics at Florida State University.
Yeah.
And the demographic, it's 8% black.
Yep.
Right.
I said, Google the demographics at Florida A&M University, and it's 3% white. And so, it unfortunately, and because there was nothing I appreciated more at Leon than the diversity of that school, and we have Leon, Lincoln, and some of our schools just have exactly what our county looks like, but many others don't. But it's not just us. You look at the two major universities in our town.
Right.
It's the same thing, but I think that is certainly a goal that we all would love to achieve, or at least
And we
figure
have to
out
have
ways
a
to move.
plan for that, to try to make a difference on that, other than saying this is just the way it is, it's always going to be, I really,
One of the,
It's race as much as it is socioeconomic.
yeah,
I
absolutely.
think it could be both.
Yep.
It's both. One of the things that, as you were walking, what are you saying?
I'm just, my back hurts.
Okay. One of the considerations that we had, you may have said this, Roseanne, the other day, is to give some thought to, well, I'll say it, the increase in diversity of the instructional talent pool, hiring more teachers. What, that would go, diverse teachers into schools.
Let's raise the salaries.
Well, and
and that's it's a
I
funding
put
issue.
that on there, pay more money. Oops, but I did,
I mean,
so-
people want to go into the teaching profession. That's an issue. We talked about at the last board
We
meeting,
did.
having trouble recruiting,
Yeah.
in particular, black male teachers. It's
That's it.
like it's a huge issue,
I
right?
think there was a good bump this year, wasn't there?
I don't know.
Yeah, with salaries there was, but to your point, African American male teachers that are usually when they the ones that when they go to college, they are not entering this profession.
Right.
I mean, they are
Yeah.
for $43,000. They're just not. I mean,
No.
and so that's, I mean, but, you know, I think we do,
We have to do what we can.
yeah,
what
and I
we
think,
have.
but I think if you look at diversity in our schools, that, does it look like the student population in our schools? In many cases, it does, with the administration and with, you know, the faculty, but it's always something that I think it's something that I used to think about as a principal, and that our principals think about when they go to hire people. But unfortunately now, you don't have a whole lot to choose from. I mean, it isn't like I have 8 people to choose to hire for this first grade position, and that's at all of our schools. I mean, that's not just a problem at some schools. That's a problem at schools that those teaching positions were coveted. I mean, oh my God, there's a position at this school, and it would be filled like that, but not anymore.
And getting back to the mic, looking at what you've communicated thus far, like diverse instructional staff pool, closing achievement gap, no district accountability schools, no DRF schools, evaluating effectiveness of all programs, identifying clearly defined pathways to careers, continuing and strengthening pre-K education. Those are realistic in terms of being able to control some of the variables. But as you said, when you start looking at socially and racially and ethnically diverse schools, then I heard comments like, well, you can't tell people where to live and where they go to school. You know, in a lot of ways, when it comes to the students, you lose some of that control. So I'm sure when the superintendent and administrative staff takes a look at leadership team, takes a look at what you've communicated, just be mindful that they're going to have to put them in those SMART goals and objectives, specific, measurable. Can it be attained? Is it realistic? And there's a difference between those two, and then, you know, the time sensitivity piece. So as you're thinking about those, and if something doesn't happen in that particular area, then you can come back and have that conversation. Just to be mindful as I took a look at the list you've provided thus far. We have 5 minutes for this one, and then we're going to break for lunch, I've been told. So
Okay, I'm going to throw in there student internships. I think that's one thing we could do for increasing our post-secondary readiness, is to have student internships in our high schools so kids get a chance to get out of the schoolhouse and be in a work situation. And that's student achievement, that's sort of post-graduation, I guess. But I would love to see us work on that more.
Are we really breaking for lunch at 11?
I would think not. Why, that's
Well,
new.
Yeah, what did you? I thought,
No.
we're not breaking for lunch at 11, right? It's
No.
11?
Oh, well, could it be just kept a little longer? We're on a roll right now. We're on a roll.
Might I suggest we probably don't need a whole hour for lunch
No, we
either,
don't.
or we're not driving anywhere or going anywhere. Do what? Well, who wrote the schedule over here? Is that not us? Well, then, what? I thought somebody gave us a schedule over there.
I didn't write that.
Okay. Chevelle, you're like, that is not
They
me.
didn't do
That
that.
was
Okay.
there, and so I didn't touch it.
Gotcha. Okay. Sorry. I thought we
He didn't
were,
do it.
I
He
thought
didn't
this
do
was
it.
us.
Someone else's house, you don't touch
Okay,
it.
that's it. Mama taught you well. Okay, so we continue to
Perfect.
move, please.
Okay. And I'm sorry, give me the last one again.
Just student internships.
Student internship.
High
Okay.
school.
All right. All right, let's talk about student safety, and then we'll break for lunch. How about that?
That sounds good.
Okay, so we're on safety. We'll finish that one before lunch, maybe. Okay.
I think, I could be wrong, so correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we're all pretty comfortable with Chief Hunkyar and how we don't really talk about our details of our physical safety plan in public. So if everybody's okay with that, we could probably focus just on the mental health pieces or other pieces. Just a thought.
I like that thought. I'm comfortable with what I see. I said that earlier. So yes, the mental health piece, as it pertains to safety for all of our students. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yeah, it looks like, I think the victories, we had massive security improvements because they were funded, mandated, and they were equitable across the district. So, I mean, that's a no.
That's an A right there.
That's
Yeah,
an
I
A.
think we can,
We're not
you
getting
know.
grades, I know, but,
Yeah, the
Summarized
victories, I
beautifully.
think, are very evident.
and the
Yes.
superintendent listed them quite well, I thought,
Yeah.
in his,
Yes. That's a done deal.
Many victories.
Many victories.
Many victories.
Many victories. Check, check, check.
And key there also, I felt like equitable. This was one page where I did not feel the need to say,
A whole
these
lot.
schools got this and these schools didn't get this. That was not there at all. It was across the board, across the district, improvements. Now, of course, the variety was due to age of buildings sometimes, but
And if there were going to be guard houses needed at other schools, that
Yeah,
was being
just-
looked at, that kind of thing. So we trust that that has happened.
so should we go on to one if we hads? I wanna.
If you don't have anything else to say,
Well,
I think that,
We're
I
still
said
in
great
safety?
safety precautions is what I said.
Yeah, I saw yours. I was like, me too.
I said great safety precautions. We've got a lot of,
We made progress. And we made progress with mental health. We have new funding for that under Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, and we had the
mental health counselors in every
mental health
school.
counselors from our contract with,
This village.
thank you, Disc Village.
okay.
I put that one under if we had.
Go ahead.
I put that in the negative category, or I won't say negative. One, can we do better?
any
And-
other general comments in the like those in the victory.
Oh, victory, 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 victory.
They're all, the safety precautions are in there.
Yeah.
We're hard, you know, our schools are so much better, what do you call it, hardened?
Yeah, hard.
Yeah, single point of entry, school hardening, all those dollars.
those
and
Officers
cents
in
to
every
make-
school.
Yeah, to create.
Yeah.
We also added remember the security monitors at all of our schools that are out and about on campuses. We have mass notification systems. I mean, it's all,
It's all
like you
captured.
said, it's all really.
Yeah.
In your
There's
draft,
a ton
so-
of things that are
Yes.
listed here. You know, I think one of the biggest things that we're doing also in the lines of mental health is the beginning of every year, teachers are talking about their students and finding common, or looking to find common issues or things that may stick out to teachers about their kids. And if they see that they may be in crisis or need help, and we have a team at each school that then evaluates the child, calls the parents in, gives them
Mental health assessment, I think.
mental health assessment, yeah, suicide risk assessments, and I mean we've at all levels, at elementary, middle, and high, that we're really trying to evaluate where our children are at the beginning of every year, emotionally.
You know, I don't know quite where this goes, but I need to kind of state it into the record since I've been thinking about it for a while. Colleagues, I still think that that we need to ensure that we have culturally sensitive and culturally appropriate psychological services to be delivered to our students. I am not suggesting that the counselors who are trained are not trained in that regard. I am saying that I think we need to make certain that we understand that there is a cultural need and a difference for a little Joy Bowen who might be at Riley and a little Joy Bowen who might be coming from the child's district. I think that I don't know that is there. So I need to put that in there, and I see that under safety because of, again, that socioeconomic background and the way the needs are addressed. And I keep talking about coming out of COVID and the needs psychologically and socially of these children. They're still going to be there to haunt us. And I want to make sure that these folk are trained even if it means getting some additional training so that the training is specific enough to deal with me and my issues and not just have it be a service because it is a service, because to me that sets little Joy back further than she would be if that is not clearly understood. And I need to be very clear about that. It's kind of like, it may not be service at all, but it could be a disservice. And I'm not accusing, but I hope that I'm clear in saying
Do no harm.
thank you, period.
Can I add to that?
Please.
What I put on mine was, and I was so encouraged by our presentation from our ESE folks the other night.
Yes.
That talked about the kind of trauma-informed training they're doing with people. And so my issue is having everybody trained in the same
Yep.
language. And the
I've got
trauma-informed
that, too.
language, what is really great about it, I don't know if you've ever done the training, but it talks about how the brain works and how people are affected by stressors in their lives and how they respond to it, and,
Absolutely.
and ways to de-escalate situations by understanding what's behind the behavior. And it's so easy to take behavior on face value and react to it because little Johnny is not acting appropriately, and you just, want to kind of, put down the hammer. But this trauma-informed education really helps adults to know how to respond and to teach it to the children. Then they can understand better why they are behaving the way they are, and give them techniques to calm themselves down and, behave properly. So that would be my hope, is that we, since we have a basis for it already, that we really make sure that everyone in the district, kids, teachers, custodians, assistant principals, deans, are trained. And I'm just going to call it trauma-informed just to have a label for it. But it's what you're talking about.
Yes,
And
I certainly do agree. And, if we had time to go into the research, which we don't, we could easily see how that is so important to what we're trying to do. And so it would be my hope from my 50,000-foot level, not making the calls on the ground, that as these councils are assigned from whichever the organizations they come from, that they will be found to have in their training bailiwick the needs, that they can go into these areas and provide that kind of training. And because I've had parents say to me, she didn't know what she was talking about. That's not how we do it over here. She did not even know what she was talking about. And I don't mean that in a disrespectful way. I mean that with being real. If you're going to train and if you're going to help little Joy move to where she needs to be, so I can catch up with little Dee Dee. Okay? That sounds a little trite. I don't mean for it to be, but I think you get where I'm coming from. And if we're going to be realistic and deal with all of these children, then I really would not like to have that just glossed over and left out there, because that is not going to help us to move, to close the achievement gap. It's not going to help morale. It is not going to help the community to see what needs to happen when we've talked about all of these other things that we say we can't do anything about. The jobs, the sidewalks, the training of the parents. But what we can do is what I think I'm suggesting, and would help to move us all.
Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
And maybe this is a question for you, Mr. Superintendent. I just, in terms of the time that we're spending here to give this kind of feedback, I've heard Chair Bowen make that same speech, I don't know how many times. Many, many times. Perhaps even before you were superintendent. What happens with that information? Is there anything that you're able, or that you do take back to your staff to see that the needle has been moved, or there's been any progress on her request for that?
So I'm not sure I understand the the question. We talk a lot about the trainings, like Roseanne said, about trauma-informed training, which I wrote down for all of our employees. I think if we hear common themes from this, so if this body says we want to do this, right? That we will certainly figure out a way to do it. But I don't know as far as measuring.
Well, I'm just wondering if it's even come up at a and I agree with you you want to hear common themes that we all, but this is something that is deeply important to her, it would appear, and I believe. And so I'm just curious if there's been any kind of, what do you do with the information that you glean from an exercise like this? And is there a process through which, this message gets to, I don't know who, Dr. Cox or whoever, that, yes, Ms. Bowen, we now have these people, I'm just curious about what happens after an exercise like this with this kind of information, where something like that has been raised over and over and over again, and it must not be happening, or she wouldn't feel compelled to keep bringing it up, I'm guessing. That said, and if we weren't on live stream, I would share a story with you about little Dee Dee in the 3rd grade. All of our kids need trauma-informed, but perhaps some more than others, and I don't take that away. But my primary reason for raising this was just to say, this keeps coming up, and have we been able to do anything to address it?
Let me just chime in just a little bit, given the role and what I would say if this was to come up anywhere. Again, it's the vision and thoughts of the board. And I'm not saying that number 1 and number 2 in blue, the culturally sensitive counselors and all staff being trained in regarding trauma, the trauma-informed program. I'm not saying that that's not an individual person making those statements, but as boards, as superintendents, boards have to remember that it needs to be collective at the 50,000 level, and it's on the superintendent side, because I've been the school board member. On the superintendent side, and it's no different than the superintendent or CEO of organization, when you're getting individual feedback, then there could be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times 5 or 10, and now 25 or 50 different priorities is placed upon the superintendent and staff, and we all know that that's just not realistic to handle that. So I'm not saying whether it's important or not important. I'm just saying we have to remember that it needs to be, like a high priority, fits within the pillars, and then the staff, the superintendent and his staff will take a look at the goals. They have to develop the goals and the action plans around that. And along with that, you can't have 10 goals for every pillar. That's not realistic. They won't accomplish that. And looking at the current plan, there's usually 3 to 5 goals and maybe a couple of objectives under each one, and that's still a lot. So even when they get all the information, they're going to have to prioritize. They're going to have to rank and prioritize based upon what has been said, based upon the mission, based upon the data. So I'm just saying that all of us have to remember that. Again, I'm not saying that number 1, number 2, not important. I'm not saying that number 1 and number 2 is not felt by all, but we have to be cognizant of if we say that one person has been making, the comments rather than it's coming from the board, because.
How do we get to that process of prioritizing? I mean, a lot of times we'll just nod because we
And
we
we think
agree.
it's done,
But
yeah.
I don't, so far, I don't know where the process is to say, okay, well, these 5 things that came out of this meeting today, out of the 15 things, these 5, the whole board really wants a goal, an objective, and a measurement for in a year.
Now, again, you're giving the input, and correct me if I'm wrong, Superintendent Hannah and Dr. Gale, but you're giving the input for the pillars that are already established, okay? And then it is the administration's job, if you will, to put together the plan. So when they put together the plan and the goals, they have to prioritize that based upon all the data that they have. And data could be what assessments are telling us, human, and the first 2 out the gate are your human resources and your fiscal resources. There may be some things that are great. Fiscally, may not be able to do it. From a human resource perspective, may not have the people power right now to do that, and might have to take a look at making some other adjustments. So when you start looking at all of that, they bring that back. We will come back together, right, and take a look at the plan that they have put together, and you can have dialogue regarding what's in that strategic plan. Correct? Out of turn?
Yeah, I just think that would help me if we just had, can we put a pin in that? Let's talk about this. We talk about it, but I want to know, and I'll go back and what is what action that we talked about the training. We were going to do the diversity and equity training, and then COVID hit last summer, and everybody was at home, and a wrench got thrown into the whole ball of wax. And then we were trying to figure out Canvas and devices and all these other things. And so I don't want you to feel like we just totally ignore what it is we want to do, or that your priority is. I hear this broad vision that I think we all are in agreement with. I'm trying to figure out how to drill down on it to something that we can implement, that's realistic, that we can implement in our schools. And so maybe y'all can help me with a takeaway to say, okay, yeah, man, we can do that.
I'd like to interject real quick, because this is something to me as well that just is a huge priority. I don't know if you guys saw the article. Suicide rates among our female high school students is up 50% across the nation, 50%. And it was already bad before that. And this one is not racially divided. This is very prevalent amongst our white girls. And I think the gang violence amongst some of our minority females. But either way, these girls are experiencing trauma. And I think we've done a good job. I think you have heard us. I think you've implemented the trauma-informed care. You've given our teachers what they need. We've improved in the student mental awareness. Hey, fill this out if you see anything going on. But number one, our teachers are overwhelmed. They're overwhelmed trying to educate. I had 140 students the year that I left the classroom, 140. So for me to identify one out of the group who was struggling and then take the time to sit down and write out this plan, which this wasn't the thing when I was there. I've got a stack of papers over here a mile high to grade, and it's difficult to do it all, and we expect our teachers to be all. In my mind, an action, something that we could probably do better. I heard this from one school about the Disc Village, that some of them are better than others. Some of them, the kids have said, oh my gosh, Miss So-and-so is great. You need to go talk to her, and she's got a line out her door. Others, no one wants to see them because they really feel like it didn't do any good for them. There's a stigma for our youth to say, I need to go talk to somebody. I think that doesn't happen until you're in your early 20s, maybe even early 40s, especially as a female. Is there anything we can do to urge our children to go talk to these people? Not just, so yes, they're on campus, yes, they're available, but is there any marketing? We're all about the marketing. Is there anything we can do actionable to let our students know, almost like the Period Project? Okay, make it readily available, make it free, make it easy, make it where they can access it like that. Same thing with our mental health. Is there anything we can do so our children feel that it's easy to go talk to somebody? Because I think that's an actionable item that we could do better and not put more work on our teachers because they are overwhelmed.
Good. So our teachers do mental health training with our students. It's a whole new, we have done more in the last 2 years as a district and probably as a state to address this issue than we've done in the last forever.
Absolutely.
Now, can we continue to do more? Yes, but our teachers are doing mental health. They have 5 hours of mental health training they do with all their students in addition to whatever
Right.
subject they teach through the Ever5 program. We're doing monitoring queries of Google searches and things like that. Are all counselors created equal? No. Are some better than others? Yes. Could we do better? Yes. But I don't want to feel like that everything's falling on deaf ears because we are really doing a ton more than we were in the past.
I didn't, and I don't want you to feel like you asked for an action item, you
Yeah.
know, and so I'm shifting away. I think we have done a great job. I think we've made improvements on our teachers. I'm trying to shift away from what more we can ask of our teachers to how we can message to our students, here's where you can't, here's a safe place. Like something, you know, and I don't know what it is. I know, too, a lot of our mental health counseling is not covered by insurance, or sometimes really good counselors have a huge waiting list. You can't get in to see them for the next God only knows how long. So I don't know what, you know, when a counselor sees a child that they need to refer on, sometimes that's not free. And I don't know how our struggling families provide those resources. So maybe I'm just burbling out things here that I think I would hope we consider, and not the lay more on our teachers, because I think we've, one, done a great job, and two, don't give them any more. Don't give them any more to do.
Yes.
Yeah, and I'm not certainly suggesting that we put anything more on our teachers. Understand that. Don't want to give the teachers anymore. As a matter of fact, that's not where I'm trying to go at all with this. I just honestly think, and I'm trying to think of some examples of things we've done. When we talked about the pre-K work, we had a process. We've got a whole office. We've got folk there who are taking care of that particular need under that bailiwick of pre-K, right? Right, I think. And so that process that we're working it out into our schools as a recommendation, suggestion from the board that's been blessed by the superintendent. All I'm continuing to say is that what we're doing for counselors? And shouldn't we be doing that for the students who need the counseling? And I know that, you know, in the community, sometimes you would get a referral, but in schools from 8 to 3:30, what are our counselors doing? Are they really doing counseling? And I am not trying to disparage in any way, but there needs to be that opportunity for them to do that, to have them released, to not fill out forms. That is so old-fashioned. They probably don't even do that anymore. I don't know if they send off applications for colleges and all. I'm just trying to put these counselors so that these girls, black girls, white girls, orange girls, green girls, girls and boys get what we can give them with our knowledge of what they need based on the research that someone has done that says that when you can provide these kinds of counseling services, students will learn. It increases the academic achievement levels. It builds up community pride, school pride, and all. So I think it's doable, and I thank you, Dee Dee, for mentioning it like that. And I know, yes, I've been singing that song for a while. Everybody knows the choruses and the verses.
So is it? So help me understand. What is the ask? What is it? Another person on our campus? Is it 2 more people on our campuses? Is it what is the? In addition to having counselor, you know, these.
It could be.
And doing the risk assessments, and the teachers teaching 5 hours of mental health, and teachers talking about kids, and then referring them, having a crisis intervention team at the school, and then if they see a child's in crisis, immediately calling the the parents in to have that conversation and to point them then to where they can seek help. What else would you like to see?
I think that's a great question for our students, because we as 40 and 50-year-olds, we can't answer that because we're not 16 anymore. But I love when our kids come from their groups and they say, hey, our students would really like to see more X. Our students they know what they're seeing on their social media. They know the little pockets of trouble, and they might be able to tell us, hey, we would like, anonymous office hours of our counselor from 6 to 8 a.m. on Wednesdays. So people, I don't know, whatever it is, they might be able to tell us what it is they want. Do you have, Michelle, is this right?
Go ahead.
Thank you. As a reminder, and it was just a start, Lane Schulte, who was our school Student District Advisory Council chair, this was her whole way of work this year. The Student District Advisory Council worked on a monthly basis with Tanja Fitzgerald, Amber, I can't remember her last name, who also works in her office, Dr. Cox, school board member Wood, she attended the meetings. They had a separate, and this is just a drop in the bucket. They had a separate Instagram page. When they opened up Canvas, they had messages every day. They made sure that all the students at the schools, the separate schools, knew who was there from this village, who their counselors were, and different things of that nature. Drop in the bucket, a start. I can take back to the students. When we start working next year, let's keep moving forward.
I love that, and I didn't even know, I had no idea about that. And I think that's a great place to start, but I think your question is better directed at our students than it is coming from us. I think that's a perfect example.
If I can just add one thing that you might want to add to asking the students about. When I was beginning a master's degree in social work, we had to go to counseling with the grad students, and I would try really hard to come up with some generic problem that nobody would trace back to me 30 years from now, and because they recorded it and all this stuff. And this guy was so skilled that he drew out a lot of stuff I didn't even know was there. The point is, Florida A&M and Florida State University have colleges of social work. If you were to create talking circles, like a club after school, where these grad students could facilitate conversations, and it's a club, so give it a whatever name, I don't know, it's just a thought. It gives the grad students experience, and it helps our students at the same time.
One more thought, just real quick on that. So club, I like it, but there's a lot of people around, and people may not be willing to share it. What about a hotline, for our student, where they could just pick up the phone and there's somebody on the other end that they can call anonymous, or they can text? I mean, we know that's how our students communicate the best. I'm in crisis. So, I don't want to be here anymore, and someone will respond to them. I don't know. Just
Absolutely.
An idea.
211 is there, and we make students aware of those services as well. We can definitely, both of these ideas, once we start with Student District Advisory Council, and our superintendent, he went to Student District Advisory Council and listened to them about what they wanted and gave the thumbs up when they expressed more services with mental health, even during COVID, and we move forward. But I'm taking those two things down. And anything else you want to share?
And so I'm sorry, we've blown up your whole.
Yeah, we have.
I'm surprised we lasted this long. Go back to. I want to make sure that these the types of things that you're talking about, Ms. Bowen, or is it?
We're starting to get there. We're starting to get there.
I go back to the training. I think that's what you
Right.
keep saying is training, and I
it
think
has
if we
to be.
have a specific set of training that everyone in the district,
Yeah, and
I wrote that down. Okay.
Okay.
that's, I think that'd go a long way.
But
personally.
but is the trauma and the diversity and equity, those are two different things, or one and the same?
Not really.
Not really.
I don't
They
think they
all
are.
could be lumped together. I should not use the word
It's
lump,
cultural
but,
sensitivity. It's understanding how people's.
Okay. All right.
I
Got it.
think it captures
Right.
it
I got it.
personally.
Yes.
Okay.
as a reminder, and I'm going back to the governance clock. Okay. Now, it's my role is almost the role of like a parent when you have adult age children, right? You know, with adults, you know, you give the advice, then they take it or don't take it. But again, just a reminder. Visioning, okay? Looking at goals and visioning. So when I look at cultural sensitive counselors, okay. All staff trained in trauma informed and how to handle those in trauma. Okay.
And the other one that Ms. Strickland just said, student input into what they need in the area of counseling should,
Okay.
I think should go on that list.
So that's what I was going to say. When you begin looking at how you get there, it's at the bottom part of the clock. As a matter of fact, the colors matches the person who's wearing those colors and responsible for it. Superintendent Hannah. So when we start talking about forms and who and what geodemographic groups and how and do we have the money, how many people, that rests with Superintendent Hannah and his staff. Now, what you can do is that as he gives updates, you can get update like you did with Superintendent Hannah and Dr. Gale. They say, you know, regarding this particular pillar and that goal and that objective, this is what we're doing. This has been accomplished. But again, I mean, he was nice enough to ask. And just to reframe what happened, basically it got back to, well, ask the students, and then it really fell back into his lap along with his team, which is where it's supposed to be. Okay? So while you can have the conversation, okay, and I always tell boards, you really have to be cognizant of that, because he could have the superintendent, and in this case, Superintendent Hannah could have 5 people bringing him 5, 10 different things. That's 25 to 50, right? And so we got to allow the superintendent to develop the plan based upon the data that he has at that particular time and implement that plan. So it's that 50,000 foot level. This is 50,000 foot. Culturally sensitive counselors. Okay. All staff trained. Trauma informed. Okay. How can we make it happen? When we can make it happen? Again, that really rests, and those conversations rest with Superintendent Hannah, unless he comes back, but he and his team, they really have to work through that. So it's
I like
just
the question he asked, though, because if you have a itch and you want it scratched, and you keep raising the question, he wants to know, how do I scratch that itch? You know, what is it you really want to see in order to not
To make it happen.
make it happen? So
What I would say is,
think that's a good
if I
dialogue.
look at this pillar, if I look at the safe environment pillar, I don't see a current goal that really drills down on that. I think we put a goal there
Me too.
I do too.
that addresses this specific issue.
That would be my desire and my recommendation.
And that's what and so
Thank
as
you.
he's listening
Yes.
to that and he's going through that, he's
Thank
making those notes
Right.
for himself and his team,
All right.
because they have to put those goals together. So he's listening to you, and that's right. That's his role to do that. You gave him that vision, and he's saying, and he'll go back to his staff. This is what was said. Look at the charts, and that's their role. Okay. Do we have anything else on safe environment? With that being said, how long for lunch? 45? 30 minutes?
At the most 30.
30. All right. Look at your watch or the clock on your phone, and 30 minutes from now, we will come back and go through, look at the 3rd, 4th, and 5th
Okay, we're going to eat here.
pillar.
Okay. So,
Oh, we're moving.
We're going to,
Okay.
okay.
so you'll get direction from Dr. Gale regarding lunch.
All right, and then I guess after Dr. Gale speaks, then we're going to recess the meeting. Well, she's getting a lunch. We'll have to recess our meeting, and then we will come back in 30 minutes. So we have to go on the record as researching the meeting, recessing the meeting, and then we'll come back. So
12:05.
we're in recess right now in 30 minutes. I better say 35.
Well,